Hello friends, and welcome back to the Chanel. It is October and it is still toasty. I don't know why. So normally, y'all know that I wake up and typically choose violence. However, this morning I woke up and chose to serve looks. Oh, it's a little too bright, but did y'all see the makeup I did today? So in one of my recent videos, I was talking about moving to Japan, how much I was saving up in order to do so, just kind of my overall experience. And in a lot of the comments, y'all were asking for like a whole moving series, and I was so flattered. However, I don't necessarily think I can offer a lot of help in that regards, because I think a lot of you guys were more curious about like the visa process, which I did not have to do. I'm a Japanese passport carrier, so I'm very blessed. I did not have to go through that very tedious process. But I was brainstorming some video ideas of videos that I think I would find really helpful before moving somewhere. So I thought the best video I can make is the pros and cons of living in Japan. But I'm mostly going to be talking about my experience living in Tokyo. I haven't lived anywhere else in Japan. So I hope this will be helpful for you guys, because as you know, Tokyo, like any other place, is going to have its benefits and its shortcomings. It is not a perfect, magical, utopian place. So I think it'd be useful to look at this in a very balanced way. Also, just remember that I'm a random lady on the internet. The pros and cons here are just pretty subjective. What I deem as a con might not bother you that much. So how about we first get into the pros? Okay, so the first pro of living in Japan is that this is an extremely safe country. Even for Tokyo, which is the largest city in the world, I think that the crime rates are still extremely low here. I think it partially has to do with the very like collective mentality. There's not only a sense of responsibility for yourself, but also the responsibility of others and how you're affecting others around you. And because of that, there's not a huge stealing problem. Actually, when I first got here and things were chaotic, to say the least, I went out drinking to an izakaya and I forgot my purse. It had my wallet, it had my passport, my train card. I was like bawling my eyes out, and these very nice locals actually took me to the police station and helped me file out a police report. And lo and behold, like 2 days later, it showed up at the police station and everything was intact. Nothing was missing out of my purse, like not even 1 yen. And pretty much all of my friends have a story like this. I even had one friend who left his entire ass laptop on the train and he still retrieved it. So the next pro, kind of piggybacking off of the idea of like the collective mentality, Japan is very clean. The major cities in America could just never. And sorry, I keep referring back to America because that's where I grew up, so that's my only other frame of reference. Like, of course, there's gonna be some like more dingy areas and kind of like Shibuya or Shinjuku that are a little bit dirtier. You know, I do see you sewer rats. However, overall, this is a very clean country. The next pro is something that was very, very important to me, and that is access to healthy foods. Just the way that Tokyo is set up and organized, every single train station has at least one supermarket, and of course there's a ton of fresh and in-season produce that tastes so good. And Japan is also famous for the convenience stores, which there's a ton of. Like, I live within walking distance of I think at least like 3. Even the convenience stores here provide a lot of healthy options. So back when I was working in an office, if I forgot to pack lunch that day, it was really no big deal because I could just run to the convenience store and they had bento boxes, salad bowls, onigiri, which is the rice ball wrapped in seaweed, veggie sticks, tofu bars, and of course my favorite is the huge selection of teas if you're trying to stray away from like sodas or super ultra processed drinks. Also in Japan, they have these kind of like fast food chains. I think one of them is called like Yoshinoya, and although these are considered fast food restaurants, they'll have little meal sets that come with like a bowl of rice, natto, which is fermented soybeans, egg, miso soup, and fish. So it's a really balanced meal, and because they're fast food, they're super inexpensive and served pretty quickly. Of course, we have McDonald's and like other kind of fast food places, but it's really nice to have the access to eat healthy if you want to. The next pro is that Japan has 4 very distinct seasons. As someone who grew up in Southern California, I just had very stable weather all year round, so it was such a treat for me to move to Tokyo and really experience the seasons. Of course, Japan is famous for their cherry blossom season in the springtime. It's absolutely breathtaking, and now I know why everyone has an obsession with autumn autumn. Like autumn is so beautiful here and I'm so excited. Actually this year I'm going to take my first trip to Nikko to just experience some of that fall foliage for myself. And the next pro is the unmatched public transportation here. Public transportation in Japan is like on another level. It is so efficient, so clean. Everyone's very quiet on the trains. I forgot the exact percentage, but most people in Tokyo solely rely on public transportation. Even the buses here are just amazing. The next pro is that Tokyo is an extremely walkable city. Tokyo is very, very flat, which I appreciate so much because living in San Francisco was, even if you were trying to walk somewhere relatively close, it could be such a hike because it was such a hilly city. Some of those inclines were the death of me, but because Tokyo is so flat, like if the weather's really nice, I don't mind just walking around instead of taking the train. I think this also contributes to why I don't have to exercise that often because I'm just walking constantly every single day. Back in California, we used to just have to drive everywhere, but I love just being able to like walk to the grocery store, walk to the cafes. It's definitely a plus for me. And the last pro I'll share with you guys is of course the rich culture, and that includes all the fun festivities that come along with it. As most of you guys probably know, Japan as a country was closed off for hundreds of years. There was no trading going on, therefore they didn't have other cultures infiltrating Japan, so they were really able to cultivate a very unique and very distinct culture. And to me that is so apparent like everywhere I go. Like I'll just be walking around a super flashy part of Tokyo with lots of arcades and lights and advertisements, but then tucked away in a little corner you'll see a shrine that people are going up to and praying to. Also, another superficial part of the culture I really like is the festivities. There's something to look forward to all year round. In the springtime for the cherry blossoms, people go to hanami, which is like the cherry blossom viewing parties. You just lay out a tarp, bring a bunch of food, a bunch of drinks, and just hang out under the cherry blossoms with your friends. In the summertime, the festivals are so fun. There's street food, everyone's in the yukatas, there's fireworks, and then there's of course festivals in the fall time as well. Alright, so those are all the pros that I have for you guys. So now, let's get into the tea. So the first con I have of living in Japan is probably going to be very obvious to you guys, and that is the working culture and the working hours. I think Japan is pretty notorious for its really rigorous and intense working culture. It seems that it's pretty normalized to sacrifice everything for your company, and I think people really overwork themselves here. Another thing I really wish I researched before coming here is I didn't realize that Japan doesn't have a typical 9 to 5, 8-hour working day like we have in America. It actually has a 9-hour working day from like 9 to 6. And on top of that, you're expected to work overtime, often without compensation. It's just kind of expected. Also within the working culture, it's considered very rude to question your superior or someone older than you, even if their ideas are really outdated. I just personally don't really like when you can't ask questions, especially if they're really reasonable and you're just asking like, oh, why are we doing this task? Oftentimes you'll just get a response like,
oh, this is how it's always been done. This is what we always do.
But it's not necessarily the most efficient anymore, so what? And I know that a lot of companies are trying to work on this and get better about it because there's a lot of people who actually pass away at work.
So unfortunately, this is such a common phenomenon in Japan that there's actually a term for it called karoshi, and there are many YouTube videos on this if you want to learn about it more in depth.
But at my old company, one of the employees literally disappeared. There's a lot of missing people in Japan where they just like uproot their life and escape because reality is too harsh, I guess. Alright, the next con about living in Japan is the gender gap. A very interesting experience living here as a woman. I forgot where Japan is ranked within the rest of the world for the gender gap, but they are down there. It's very bad. Although in the pros I was talking about how I think Japan is overall a very safe country, it's a very different story for the women here. Almost all of my female friends have a story of, I guess I'll just call them like less than pleasant encounters on the train. There's a lot of harassment. Also, there's a huge problem with stalking here. Also, because of the collective mentality here, people don't really want to disrupt or bother others. So even if you are getting harassed, it's kind of hard to speak up because it doesn't really seem like anyone else is going to help you. They're just like, oh, why is this lady like making a scene when you're the one that's literally getting harassed? So I wouldn't say that this is something that affects my everyday life. It's just something to always keep in the back of your mind if you're living here. So this next con is limited clothing sizes. This is something I also mentioned in my culture shock video, but I've noticed that a lot of the clothing here is one size fits all, or there's only two sizes, small and medium. And that's why when I shop for clothes here in Japan, especially like pants and stuff, I'll probably have to go to a Western store like Zara or H&M or something, because I know they have a wider range of clothing sizes. But I see tons of taller people, bigger people. Also, there's a lot of foreigners like myself who find it just very difficult to find clothing sizes. So that's just something I wish was considered a little bit more. And the next con is the lack of international food. And of course, because this is Tokyo and we're in Asia, there's a lot of really good Asian food. There's lots of good Thai, Indian, Chinese, Korean restaurants. Once again, I'm gonna pull the California girl card, but I really miss authentic Mexican food. That's the #1 food category that I hear a lot of foreigners talking about. Like, we just want good Mexican food. Gosh darn it. I also really miss Mediterranean food and Ethiopian food a lot. All right, and the next con is something I truly just cannot get over, and that is the brutal summers. If y'all watch this channel, you know that I just cannot stand how humid, how muggy, how rainy, how hot, how brutal these summers really are. It is October and I'm still sweating. Like, I'm probably forming some pit stains right now. And another thing that comes with summers in Japan are the roaches. The cockroaches here are inescapable. They are massive and they fly. Okay. Honestly though, in the summertime, I get a huge kick out of just watching everyone's Instagram stories. Like, there's always someone that's like,
I found a cockroach in my apartment.
they're like showing you the whole experience of how they're trying to capture it. Because as you know, like, killing cockroaches are hard. They're big bugs. And the next con for me isn't too bad. It's just something to consider. The housing is obviously very, very small here. All the doorways are very, very short. Like, my partner has to dip down every time he walks under a door. Also, our kitchen counters and the cabinets, everything's a little bit lower. I'm not even like that tall of a person. I'm 5'6", which is pretty average, but everything is very low set. And I think Tokyo is pretty well known for just its itty bitty little apartments. But also, I have a bone to pick about the insulation of Japanese housing. I know a lot of other foreigners have noticed this too, because in the summertime it gets way too hot. You literally have to have the AC running at all times, and in the winter time, because the insulation is so bad, it just constantly feels freezing in your apartment. It's very hard to just keep it warm on the inside. And the very last con is that Tokyo is way too crowded. I mean, obviously though, right? Because Tokyo is the largest city in the world. There's a population of about 37 million people here, and as much as I love going out, I don't know if it's because of this pandemic lovato, but even to like go out into town and go shopping becomes very, very exhausting just because there's so many people around you at all times. And girl, don't even get me started about the train stations. I feel like a little sardine, like just trying to weave my way through the crowd. And even some of my favorite areas to shop, like Harajuku or Shibuya, you're just bumping into people at all times. So if you're a little introverted soul like me, just know that you might be really overwhelmed by just how many people live here. Oh my goodness, y'all, that is a wrap. Thank you guys so much for making it through this entire video if you did. And I guess the purpose of making these videos is that I want as many people as possible to move abroad if you can. I think it's hands down one of the best decisions you could ever make in your life. I think it's so important to just get out of your own bubble and to experience and immerse yourself in an entirely different new culture. It'll just teach you so much about the world and also really challenge yourself and discover who you are as a person as well. I hope that this encourages you to take that leap and move to Japan if you're thinking of doing it yourself. But I'm very curious, if you guys have visited or have lived in Japan, please let me know what you think is the #1 pro and the #1 con about living here. But yes, until next time, bye-bye!